Dungeon mastering is an art which takes a few minutes to learn and years to perfect. It goes beyond world or adventure creation, beyond social grace, even beyond advanced crowd control. It combines vast amounts of creativity, the ability to make quick, accurate judgment calls. It requires a mind that can visualize situations as they happen and determine the probable, and often highly improbable, results of the actions taken by the players and their characters. The ultimate goal is to provide the players with gripping adventures from the fantastic realms of a shared imagination. Although all players, including DM, contribute to the quality of the game, ultimate success depends on the DM themselves. They are responsible for both its challenging content and riveting delivery. This is one of the first couple of paragraphs in an accessory book that was released in 1990. It was a supplement to Dungeon Master's Guide for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. So, this book covers a lot of advice on the GM side in terms of logistics and both not. From being prepared, limiting distractions, and to discussing pre-rolling characters and lots more. So, there's a lot of advice in here, and I still think it's worth taking a particular look and attention to even 30 plus years later. So, I'm going to be unpacking this treasure trove of info for some key GM tools, tricks, and tips, as well as my own insights from the book. Specifically, we'll be talking about GM logistics and etiquette in today's video. So without further ado, let's do this. All social gatherings need to account for both the players and GM following the rules of said public and private etiquette. For example, public play does not equal home play. Your game session might not be on Zoom or Discord. It might indeed be offline. And obviously this book was written in 1990, so online ttrpgs were not a thing by any stretch of the imagination. However, as we might know, it might not be possible to play your game online. You might just want to play it offline. Trust me, hosting a game session and finding a space for one can be super difficult after all. So you might need to run it in a public venue/space. This could be a student lounge, a coffee shop, a lobby area of your apartment. It could be a local game store or a hobby store. It could also be a library. However, this means courtesy is necessary because you're using a physical space that others are in. Y'all, I know, we've all been there. We've gotten super excited or nervous at a role. We get loud and or rowdy, and that is entirely justifiable. However, that can and might disturb others, especially if you're in a public place. So you have to take that into consideration when you're running and playing games outside of your home, especially in person. In fact, the book also mentions another important point: the opening ceremony. These are the moments before the game where you connect with your friends, you talk about what's going on in your life, you make silly jokes, maybe you send memes to your friends. Whatever it is, this is the moment before the game where everyone's feeling each other out. Opening ceremonies can be a great way for players and the GM to ease the tension into the game. Game sessions are, after all, as much about time in the game as they are about getting comfortable with your players and the GM. There should, I think, be a little time before the game where folks can just catch up. And don't rush this time unless you absolutely need to. For example, if you're at a conference or maybe a convention, it might make sense not to start with all of the opening ceremonies or to shorten that conversation. Why? Because the players and or you might have had a stressful or exhausting day. Maybe they came from a long school day or a long work day. Maybe they're dealing with family troubles or friend troubles or relationship troubles. And the game might be one of the few times they get to talk or connect with someone in a meaningful way. So allow this time to catch up. Allow this time to joke about your lives and allow this time to get to know your players and or your GM. And plus, players also need time to strategize, review their abilities, and review the previous game session. So give some time before even the game begins to talk about your lives and also about the game itself. And when folks are ready, just ask for everyone to move on. Beyond etiquette is the conversation on actually running the game itself and its logistics. There will be loads of situations that the book describes, and here's some of them that I took from it. First, share the world in love. As stated, It should be a simple matter for each DM to take part of the world, say a major country or wilderness area, and continue to flesh it out and run adventures there. Everyone can share in the GM experience if they like to. Just make sure to account for everyone in it. This allows for great world building and everyone gets chances to play and run games. No one feels left out. Because, trust me, as someone who majorly GMs, sometimes I want to be a player. So when I get the chance to be a player, it's great. This same logic applies to players. Always give players the option to switch or change characters as long as everyone is okay with that and it's not too game breaking. That also means ensuring balance between all characters. You don't want a powerful fighter at level 12 wandering with a group of level 4 players unless there's something fantastical for it, or magical, or particularly important for the plot. The cool thing about this book, it also covers general delivery tips, such as style, approach, and techniques that'll be always helpful no matter it's a fantasy game or investigation game. And even if this book is a little bit old and dated, there is some good advice, such as not manipulating players. Let the players decide how their characters will act and where they will go. This seems like an obvious one, but it happens all the time. GMs, your responsibility, I think, is to be fair and to give your players agency. Allow them to do what they want. Never try to manipulate or take away agency from the character, and if you're going to do something like that, you need to be very clear to the player on why you're doing that. You need buy-in. Secondly, never favor characters. A tenet, especially of old school Renaissance games, and I believe this firmly, is to fairly administer the results of characters' actions. Don't change consequences and results to certain players over the other. As stated, they should only give the results of actions, not change the scenario to favor one character. And I agree to this philosophy. I particularly don't favor one PC over the other. I believe that ruins the game and ruins, honestly, the intensity of situations. You should arbitrate the rules fairly. You should give players the information they need. Next, don't punish the player. Punish the characters if they do something that is ridiculous, outlandish, within the context of the world. That being the case, don't single out individual players because you hate the player. You should talk to the player outside the game if there is a problem. And finally, don't choose sides. The GM should not inherently be on the side of the monsters or on the side of the players. As quoted, a good DM will play monsters and NPCs to their fullest without actively trying to annihilate the party or giving them smarts or insight that they should not reasonably possess. And I agree to that philosophy, and I agree to all these philosophies. Why? Because as the GM, I think your job is to present things fairly, to be a neutral arbiter as much as you can if that's the game you're trying to run. You want your players to succeed, but you also don't want them just to cakewalk through absolutely everything. At least, I think so. So I was a little bit skeptical about this book, but as I dived further and further, I learned more and more, not only about myself, but about the hobby, and that a lot of the advice that we hear is pulled from years and years of GMs building on top of other GMs, building on top of other GMs, and also the hobby growing and changing. There's a lot of advice in this book that, while it is still applicable, might not also be all that applicable. But in all of that, I do think there was one important quote. The Dungeon Master's task is not an easy one. On their shoulders rests the responsibility for the whole game. It is a DM's job to make sure that everyone, themselves included, has a good time when they play the AD&D game. If you are an experienced DM, then you are sure to know that there are times when this task is so daunting that you wonder why you didn't stick with a safe hobby like stamp collecting. And I think sometimes, why did I stick with another hobby? And the reason is simple. I enjoy playing fun, quirky, queer, and beautiful characters in all of their problems and glories. It's not easy, and quite frankly, it's difficult. But it is most certainly the option I chose because it's fun, it's beautiful, and I like telling awesome stories together with other awesome people. And this DMG, or well, resource, reminded me why I run games and play, and why I have all of the great people that watch this content. Speaking of which, thank you for all of your support. If you want to support my content, feel free to like and subscribe over here. And if you want to support me monetarily, you can check out my Ko-fi or my Patreon. And a special shout out to Harrison Parker for the Patreon contributions. You help this channel grow, as well as all of you who continue to watch my videos. And as always, I'm your average everyday queer host, blerdydisposition. Hope you all have an awesome day. And if you're looking for more videos covering this book, check out this video on GM style play if you're looking for a further dive on specific GM styles. Ciao, y'all.